Welcome to Hood Politics. In this episode, I will be discussing incidents caught on video. The facts of the case are as follows. Los Angeles is one of the most surveilled cities in the United States. From businesses to homes to vehicles, the city is flooded with cameras. So there's a good chance that anytime you're moving around the city, you're being recorded. But with Los Angeles being the city that it is, a large portion of things caught on video are horrific. On Wednesday, February 2nd, 2022, shortly after 2 p.m., a 16-year-old young man named Hector Flores was sitting in an SUV parked in front of a home on East 28th Street. Shortly afterwards, a vehicle turned from Maple Avenue onto 28th Street and stopped in the middle of the street near the SUV. A man exited the driver's seat, pulled out a gun, and opened fire on Hector. The man then ran back to the vehicle and fled the scene. Hector was shot and transported to a hospital, where he was pronounced dead. The investigation and legal process are ongoing. On the night of Saturday, December 12th, 2015, there was an event being held at the Standard Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. The hotel featured a rooftop lounge that played music and served food and drinks. At around 2:30 a.m., the lounge was closing and people began leaving the hotel. Shortly afterwards, two groups of attendees began to argue on the sidewalk in front of the hotel, and things quickly turned physical. During the fight, a man in a trench coat pulled out a gun and opened fire on the rival group. Two men were shot. The group that was being shot at ran through the hotel lobby and exited through the back door. At the same time, the shooter ran around the outside of the building and met the group as they exited the back door and opened fire on them a second time. One of the men pulled out his own gun and returned fire at the shooter. The shooter then fled the scene. Two more men were shot during the exchange, one being the man that returned fire and the other was a 21-year-old man named Thomas Johnson. All four men were transported to a hospital. Thomas Johnson was pronounced dead. The other three men were treated for their wounds and released. The shooter was later identified as a 32-year-old man named Jermaine Harrington. Detectives were unable to locate him and the FBI began helping in the search. Investigators offered a $50,000 reward for information leading to his arrest, but to this day, Jermaine Harrington remains free. On Tuesday, January 11th, 2022, at around 9 p.m., a 33-year-old man named Reginald Thompson was standing in the parking lot of a Plaza located at the intersection of Vermont Avenue and Imperial Highway. As Reginald talked with a group of friends, a vehicle drove southbound on Vermont Avenue and parked just past the Plaza. Moments later, four men, each armed with a gun, exited the car and ran towards the Plaza. The group then opened fire on Reginald and his friends. They then ran back to their vehicle and fled the scene. When the smoke cleared, Reginald and another man were shot. They were both transported to a hospital. Reginald was pronounced dead, and the other man was treated for his wounds and released. Reginald was the father of a young boy and girl. He was also a talented singer, writer, and DJ. This wasn't the first time that Reginald was shot at, and in the now ominous video, he spoke on those past events and his feelings towards violence.
Look, I'm gonna just say this. Niggas need to stop coming through shooting that shit and they don't know what they shooting at. It's the second time I almost got killed. And it's just like, shit done, bro. Like niggas just come through busting and just don't even know who they shooting at. And we shooting at the wrong color, bro. We should be aiming at something else. We should be aiming to succeed and aiming to progress in our life or something else, bro. Aiming to do something for our kids, but we aiming at our own race. Like, it's dumb, bro. We gonna kill each other off, and it's gonna be sad. We gonna be an extinct culture, nigga. Think about it.
Investigators offered a $20,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of Reginald's killers. The investigation and legal process are ongoing. On Wednesday, November 23rd, 2016, at around 9:30 p.m., a 16-year-old young woman named Dana Rojo Rivas was sitting in the back seat of her family's car, holding their pet poodle, Luna. Dana's mother, Sandra, was driving, and her brother, Ethan, was sitting in the passenger seat. The family had just left church, where they attended a pre-Thanksgiving service and dinner. Shortly afterwards, the car stopped at a red light at the intersection of Euclid Avenue and Long Beach Boulevard in the city of Lynwood. Unbeknownst to the family, family, a burgundy SUV had turned onto the street and was approaching them from behind. The SUV was being chased by a gray sedan, and moments later, the family's car, the SUV, and the sedan were all stopped at the light. The people inside of the SUV exited the vehicle and began running away. A man exited the sedan and opened fire on them as they fled. Sandra mashed the gas and left the scene, but quickly pulled over when she realized Dana had been shot. A bullet pierced the back panel of the family's car and struck her in the chest. Ethan pulled Dana from the car and attempted to help her, while someone nearby called 911. Luna became frightened during the commotion and ran from the car into the street, where she was struck and killed by a passing vehicle. Moments later, paramedics arrived at the scene, but they were unable to save Dana. At 9:45 p.m., Dana Rojo Rivas was pronounced dead. Dana was a junior at Gardena High School, and upon hearing the news of her death, students organized a memorial service in her honor. She excelled at softball and loved animals. Investigators offered a $30,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of her killer. The investigation and legal process are ongoing. On Sunday, October 29th, 2017, at around 3:40 p.m., a 28-year-old man named Angel Maciel was riding a skateboard on Stanwin Avenue. Shortly afterwards, a green car pulled up alongside of him and someone inside of the car opened fire. Angel was transported to a hospital where he was pronounced dead. Angel was raised in the area and had grown up on Stanwin Avenue since he was 15 years old. He was a floor maker and split his time in between working and visiting his mother in Mexico. A person of interest in Angel's murder is a man named Derek Dominguez. 2 months after Angel's murder, on Sunday, December 31st, Derek was at a KFC restaurant along with his girlfriend and 2 sons when a group of men arrived. Among the group was a 23-year-old man named Jorge Reyes. Derek believed that the group was giving him dirty looks and approached him in the parking lot. Derek began arguing with Jorge and punched him in the face. Jorge punched him back and Derek pulled out a gun and opened fire. Jorge was shot multiple times and collapsed in the parking lot. At 7 p.m., Jorge Reyes was pronounced dead. After the murder, Derek went on the run, and in early 2021, he was apprehended in Mexico. The investigation and legal process are ongoing. On Thursday, October 22nd, 2020, shortly before 4:30 p.m., a 34-year-old man named Edward Gray was driving a vehicle on 121st Street near Mona Park in Compton. Shortly afterwards, a white vehicle pulled up alongside of his vehicle and someone inside of the car opened fire multiple times. The car then fled the scene, and immediately afterwards, 3 men exited a nearby black car and opened fire on Edward's car multiple times. The men then ran back to their vehicle and fled the scene. When the smoke cleared, Edward's vehicle was riddled with bullet holes and he was struck multiple times. He was transported to a hospital where he was pronounced dead. The investigation and legal process are ongoing. On Monday, January 25th, 2016, at around 6:30 p.m., a 21-year-old man named Jarek Thomas was walking near the intersection of 54th Street and 10th Avenue. As Jarek crossed 54th Street, there was a car stopped on 10th Avenue with his left blinker on. Jarek made it across the street and began walking towards 9th Avenue. The car then turned right and began following him. Moments later, the car stopped near him and the passenger exited the vehicle, approached him, and opened fire. Jarek was transported to a hospital, and at 7:10 p.m., Jarek Thomas was pronounced dead. Jarek was headed to his grandmother's house and had just gotten off the phone with his mother. She overheard someone ask him about his gang affiliation, and he replied that he wasn't from anywhere. She believes that he was murdered by those same people a few minutes later. Jarek was enrolled in nursing school and worked as a security guard. Investigators offered a $50,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of his killer. The investigation and legal process are ongoing. On Wednesday, November 7th, 2018, at around 10:30 p.m., a 22-year-old man named Rene Lupien was on his way home from work at a nearby In-N-Out restaurant when he decided to stop by the liquor store and buy some beers. Shortly before Rene entered the store, a woman entered the store, and the two crossed paths while they were walking the aisles. Rene purchased a 6-pack of beer and left the store. He then put the cans into his backpack and began walking home. The woman could be seen getting into a waiting white car. The car then followed Rene onto Concourse Avenue and stopped near him. A man exited the car and robbed Rene. Rene gave up the backpack, but when the man demanded his necklace and cross pendant, Rene refused. The robber then hit him in the head and shot him twice. The robber then ran back to the car and fled the scene. People in the neighborhood called 911 and Rene was taken to a hospital. At 11:07 p.m., Rene Lupien was pronounced dead. Many asked why wouldn't he just give up the necklace, but the necklace meant a lot to him. Renee's grandma had given it to him shortly before she passed away. Renee's older sister Christy said she would tell him not to wear it out, but he was proud to wear it. Police found the necklace lying on the ground beside Renee. Renee enjoyed writing poetry and listening to music, especially the band The Doors. He studied literature at Antioch University and had enrolled in trade school to pursue architecture. Renee would help his mom with bills and bring food home for the family after work. Investigators offered a $20,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of his killer, and within a few weeks, they had all of their suspects in custody. 20-year-old Wayne Sear, who was the driver, 20-year-old Samantha Castillo, who was the woman inside of the store that was seen getting into the car, and 19-year-old Abraham Cabrera, who was the gunman. Samantha was charged with robbery. Wayne was charged with robbery and accessory after the fact. Abraham was charged with murder for the death of Renee Lupian, as well as robbery and firearm charges. The investigation and legal process are ongoing. On Friday, July 12, 2013, at around 12:45 p.m., a 21-year-old man named Dejan Ward pulled into a 7-Eleven parking lot located on the corner of 12th Avenue and Venice Boulevard. Dejan had traveled from Victorville to the Beverly Hills courthouse to pay a fix-it ticket and stopped in the store's parking lot to look at his map. At the same time, a silver SUV pulled into the store's parking lot. The driver exited the vehicle and began walking towards the store, and on his way in, he began talking to Dejan, who was still seated in his car. Moments later, the SUV's passenger exited the vehicle and ran towards Dejan's car. The man pulled out a gun and opened fire. The two men then ran back to the SUV and fled the scene. Dejan was shot in the torso and attempted to drive himself toward help, but ended up crashing into a nearby apartment building. The bullet pierced his heart and lungs, and he was pronounced dead at the scene. Investigators offered a $50,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of his killers, and the tips began flooding in. Detectives later charged two members of MS-13 in connection with Dejan's murder: Jorge Fernandez, also known as Solo, who was the shooter, and Young Tak, also known as Scar, who was the driver. Jorge told a friend that he was high on drugs and believed that Dejan was a rival blood gang member and that he was saying something disrespectful to Young. The two were also charged in connection with the 2015 robbery of a man referred to as JP. JP would buy drugs from a man named Peter Cha. Peter Cha would give JP drugs to sell, and JP would pay him back after selling them. Peter would usually front him 10 to 15 pounds. After a while, JP was in the hole and owed Peter between $7,000 and $10,000. On June 3rd, the two met in the parking lot of Piper's Restaurant on Western Avenue. As they sat in the car, Peter asked JP when he would be paid. Young then approached the car. Peter and Young knew each other. Peter exited the car, and then Young got in and pistol whipped JP. Jorge entered the back seat and also began hitting JP. Jorge then went through JP's pockets and took his money, one of his cell phones, and his belt. Jorge told JP that he now owed him, not Peter, and that he was going to keep the car as collateral until they were paid. Jorge and JP exited the car and Young drove it away. Jorge told JP that he would be taxed $10,000 a month and that he knew where he and his girlfriend lived. JP took a cab home and reported the incident to police. Ultimately, Young Tak was found guilty with accessory after the fact in connection to the murder of Dejan Ward, as well as firearm charges and carjacking for the robbery of JP. Young Tak was sentenced to 19 years and 8 months in prison. Jorge Fernandez was found guilty with the murder of Dejan Ward, as well as firearm charges, second-degree robbery, and carjacking for the robbery of JP. Jorge Fernandez was sentenced to 150 years to life in prison. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Please like, comment, and subscribe.